from the heart of Dubai. This is Sports Unhinged with Mohammed Hamiz.
And we are on. Hello and welcome to another episode of Sports Unhinged. My name is Mohammed Hamiz. Wherever you might be listening to us today, on SoundCloud, iTunes, Apple Podcast app, Stitcher, Facebook, or YouTube, we are glad that you can be here with us. What a show do we have for you today? So much to talk about. I mean, earlier this week, I went to sleep one night and I was like, this podcast is going to be about the two main events of the week. It's going to be about the Champions League draw, and we'll talk a little bit about the Conor McGregor Floyd Mayweather fight. You go to sleep, you wake up in the morning, and what do you see on your phone? Some notifications that Jon Jones in the UFC has tested positive for a steroid and is going to be stripped of his light heavyweight title. And in the NBA, one of the biggest trades ever, when was the last time that we saw two teams that met in the conference finals trade their best players? I'm, of course, talking about Kyrie Irving and Isiah Thomas. So we're going to be talking about that today. But let's start off with the Champions League draw. It happened yesterday in Monaco, and we have some drama in store for us this year in the Champions League. Before I go into my predictions and let you know who we think is going to finish top to bottom in each of the groups, let me just touch on the seeding system, the pots that the teams were picked from. And I'm not sure what the logic behind those are. I'm sure there's some kind of rating system, some points that decide which team goes in which pot, but something doesn't make sense. And what doesn't make sense to me is how a team like Atletico Madrid, who have been in the final twice in the last 4 years, they're not considered as a top-tier team in the draw. Meanwhile, we have teams like Shakhtar Donetsk, Spartak Moscow, that were there in pot one. Somebody has to explain this to me, because it doesn't make sense. But anyways, we had a fantastic draw. We're going to start with Group A, Benfica, Manchester United, CSKA Moscow, and Basel. And with that group, I really think that Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, especially Liverpool, got very, very easy draws this year. And sadly, we won't see them get tested against the best teams in the Champions League until we get to the knockout stages. But I think Manchester United win this group very easily. Just the firepower that they have. We just heard that Zlatan Ibrahimovic re-signed with Manchester United this week as well. I mean, they already looked very, very threatening without him. By adding somebody like that into your team again, with Lukaku coming on board, they're going to be unstoppable. So Manchester United finished top for me. Benfica finishes second. CSKA Moscow get the Europa League spot, and Basel finish fourth. That's the way that I'm predicting it. Although let me mention something. It's probably not going to be very relevant, but Manchester United actually failed in a very similar group back in 2012. They finished third behind Benfica and Basel. Of course, that means nothing right now. But they also finished third when they were drawn in the same group as CSKA Moscow in 2015-2016. If any of you have watched the draw, you would have seen that the Man United delegation was so pleased they were actually covering their faces to disguise their smiles when Benfica's name came up in the draw. So it's interesting. That shows you the confidence that they have for the year coming up. Group B is where some of the action is going to be happening. Bayern Munich against Paris Saint-Germain. We haven't seen that tie in modern times. Carlo Ancelotti will be facing his ex-club. I think Bayern Munich make it out of that group very easily. They win that group. Paris Saint-Germain finish second. Celtic finishes third. And Anderlecht finishes fourth. Celtic could make some noise in this group. I don't think they're going to edge Bayern Munich or PSG to qualify for the next stage. But the most important ties or the most important matches for Celtic in this group will be against Anderlecht. If they beat Anderlecht home and away, they at least guarantee that Europa League spot. And with Brendan Rodgers there, I think he's doing some great stuff with that team. Group C, very, very interesting. Chelsea and Atletico Madrid. If you want to add fuel to the Diego Costa fire, look no further than Group C of the Champions League. Chelsea, Roma, Atletico Madrid, and some team from Azerbaijan called Karabag, who are, I think, making their debut because I've never seen them before. I actually had to look up where they were from when the draw was happening. But I think in this particular group, I'm going to make a bold prediction. I think Atletico Madrid completely and overwhelmingly destroy Chelsea, both home and away. And it's going to be a fantastic tie to watch, not for what's going on the field, but what's going on in the sidelines. Imagine Conte and Diego Simeone, two of the most animated coaches in football today, standing side by side, going absolutely nuts with the sign language. It will be very interesting to watch. I say in this particular group, Atletico Madrid finishes first. I have Roma going second. I have Chelsea failing to qualify to the next round of the Champions League, but I predict that they have a long Europa League run. So Atletico first, Roma second, Chelsea third, Karabag, don't know anything about them. They might make some noise, but I haven't seen a single game. I don't know a single player. Can't comment there. Safe to say they'll finish fourth. Group D. We've got Barcelona, we've got Juventus, we've got Sporting Lisbon and Olympiacos. Again, a fantastic tie. We're getting a lot of entertainment here in the first round. A lot of good teams being clubbed together. Maybe it's because of the silly seeding system that UEFA have come up with. But we get Juventus versus Barcelona, which is a recent Champions League semi-final tie and a recent final tie as well. As a Juventus supporter, I don't think I'm too worried about that group, simply because Barcelona don't look the same. While I was driving to the studio right now to record this podcast, I got a notification mentioning that Dembele has been signed for $124 million. That's 105 million euros, that's 97 million pounds. Making him the second most expensive player of all time. Barcelona just bought a guy from Dortmund that is 20 years old, and they paid the second most amount ever for this guy. Imagine going from your debut to being the second most expensive player in 2 years. I don't know what that means for Barcelona. I still think the Neymar loss, you can pay as much as you want for the replacement. You're not going to get quality like Neymar in the team. I have Juventus finishing first in that group. I have Barcelona finishing second, Sporting Lisbon finishing third, and Olympiacos finishing fourth. In Group E, we have Spartak Moscow. Still don't understand how they made it to pot one. We've got Sevilla, we've got Liverpool, and Maribor. Now, mind you, Sevilla is on the recent third manager right now because Unai Emery and Sampaoli got promoted to bigger teams. Unai Emery's at PSG right now. Sampaoli got the Argentina job. But let's look at who they have right now in Berizzo. Berizzo, knocked out Real Madrid in the Copa del Rey last season with a very modest Celta Vigo squad. He's a good manager. Liverpool, on the other hand, are defensively naive, and they face Sevilla again, who humiliated them in the Europa League final. So the last time these teams met, Sevilla absolutely dominated the team. And we've seen Liverpool also struggle against smaller team. We remember what happened a few years ago, especially the fans of Liverpool will remember what happened against Razgrad, a Bulgarian club, where Liverpool couldn't go past them. So I think Sevilla wins that group very easily. Liverpool barely make it to the second round in second place. Spartak Moscow finishes third and Maribor finishes fourth. But Liverpool will have to be wary of smaller teams because they tend to choke against smaller teams in European competitions. Group F, we've got Shakhtar Donetsk, another baffling choice for pot one. And you will see how baffling it is because they got drawn against a pot 2 and a pot 3 team in Napoli and Manchester City, with Feyenoord finishing, I think, in pot 4. Manchester City, interestingly, have finished third in a group with Napoli in 2012. Means nothing, I know. I'm a guy who likes a lot of statistics sometimes. I like to look at the history and see if any patterns happen again from time to time. But as someone who watches Serie A regularly, let me tell you that I fully expect Napoli to pull a double win over Manchester City, home and away. That team is much more of a finished article, and their defense is far more organized and solid than Manchester City right now. Now, the only thing that Napoli struggles with is concentration in big games. Under the big lights, palms get sweaty, backsides get tight, as they say, and Napoli seems to mess up sometimes under the spotlight. But if they play like they usually do, with their slick passing and their solid defense, then they should cut through that City defense like a knife through butter. It should be very, very easy. And it should be very fun to watch. So I have Napoli finishing top of that group. I've got Manchester City, unless they pull another disastrous defensive display against the smaller teams in Shakhtar and Feyenoord. I have Manchester City finishing second. I have Shakhtar finishing third and Feyenoord finishing fourth. Let's move on now to Group G. We've got Monaco, Porto, Besiktas, and debuters in the Champions League, RB Leipzig. I think Porto wins that group simply because Monaco have lost too much firepower. It would be great to see Leipzig finishing second, although I don't think I'm ready to make that prediction just yet. So I have Monaco going second. But as rookies in the Champions League, Leipzig should be expected to struggle against whoever they play, but they should be expected to pull off an upset as well. If there's a team that could pull off an upset, it would be Leipzig. They got a bit of a Leicester group, going on this year. So maybe with a good run, they can make second or third. I have them going third and Besiktas finishing fourth. The final group, Group H, which is branded as the group of death. We've got Real Madrid, Tottenham, Borussia Dortmund, and Apoel. And there's not much to say about this group, honestly. Not much of a prediction. It's as sure as they can come. Real Madrid will win that group. Borussia Dortmund should finish second. Tottenham, I don't think are ready. I honestly don't think they're ready to move on to the next level. They get a Europa League spot, and Apoel finishes fourth. So that's basically our prediction for the Champions League this year. Very, very interesting. It's going to be an exciting first round. We're going to see a lot of big games that are mainly worthy of being knockout stage games, but we're going to get to see a home and away leg. So it's always a bonus. Let us know what you think. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the biggest event of the week, of the month, of the year, of the decade, some are saying. Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather is less than 48 hours away. We're going to be talking a little bit about that when we come back.
You're listening to the Sports Unhinged podcast.
Well, the circus is upon us. 48 hours or less. We're going to be watching Floyd Mayweather go up against Conor McGregor in what's being branded as the fight of the century, the fight of the decade, something that we've never seen before. I'm going to be tuning in for sure, but I will be watching it, like I told you, as a circus, as a spectacle. I'm watching it more for the walk-ins and the build-up and the in-the-ring antics more than I am watching it for a boxing bout. Now, I told you guys, I'm a boxing fan. I'm also a big MMA fan, big Conor McGregor fan. Not so much Floyd Mayweather. Actually, a Floyd Mayweather hater. But Mayweather has a huge edge in this fight. He has the edge in the lateral movement. He has the edge in the upper torso movement, in the reaction time, the speed, the accuracy of the punches. This is not going to be a contest. McGregor's stance when he is fighting is upright. It's rigid. He's more flat-footed, which he has to be as an MMA fighter. But in the boxing context, he looks more like, he reminds me of those black and white boxing fights that you used to watch in the 1950s with the commentator that talks like this. It's going to be no contest whatsoever. I think McGregor's only chance, I don't think he has a chance, but if I was McGregor, I think my only option for this fight is to copy Maidana's strategy. Bull rush Mayweather from the start. Try to rough him up and get some body shots in, an uppercut, some clubbings from the left. And maybe, if you do that for 3 rounds, you can make it work for you. After that, Conor McGregor's MMA conditioning means his power will dissipate. We've seen him run out of gas against Nate Diaz. And that's when Floyd Mayweather's ring smarts are going to kick in. His movement, his hand speed. It will be the beginning of the end for Conor McGregor. Now, I have this image in my mind of Roberto Duran fighting Sugar Ray Leonard. The one where Sugar Ray actually decided to box him. And the sheer frustration on Roberto Duran's face as the jabs kept coming in from nowhere and there was nothing he could do about it is something that is sticking with me here. As tough and talented as Roberto Duran was, that night, he was humiliated. This is what I think Mayweather versus Conor McGregor will be like. For all of Conor McGregor's aggression, the strength, the size, the bravery, the heart, I think that a couple of rounds into the fight, the dawning look of realization on McGregor's face will mirror that of Roberto Duran's all these years ago. Expect Floyd Mayweather to toy with Conor McGregor and make him look like a child. A public humiliation, I think, will hurt Conor McGregor a lot more than a knockout will. And that's what we're going to see. By the way, I can't believe I have to do this, but I'm going to bring up Floyd Mayweather's amateur record because many people here, and if the betting in Las Vegas is any indication, many people are disregarding Floyd Mayweather's 49-0 record. So let me bring up his amateur record. 84-8. Floyd Mayweather had 92 fights, similar to this one, with little or no information about his opponent. Fighting absolutely complete strangers is what makes an amateur career successful, and nothing translated better to a professional career than Floyd Mayweather's, who is unbeaten in 49 bouts. Now, a lot of you will say, hey, freak occurrences happen, right? Douglas beat Tyson. Trump beat Clinton. The Giants beat the undefeated Patriots in 2007. The Atlanta Falcons blew a 25-point lead from late in the third quarter against the Patriots last year. Ali beat Foreman. And some of you might disagree with that, but trust me, if Muhammad Ali fought George Foreman 10 times, George Foreman would win about 8 of those 10. So a lot of you will say, yeah, a freak accident could happen and Conor McGregor can get that punch in. No, no, and no. This is not the same. I refuse to believe it. Floyd will win this over a 12-round fight that will be a complete boxing lesson for Conor McGregor. You have to understand, there is a reason why the vast majority of high-level professional boxers box and move in similar ways. This is not an accident. It's because doing otherwise usually opens you up for heavy, heavy punishment. There is a reason seasoned professionals don't square up after throwing a punch. They don't back straight up either when retreating. They move away from their opponent's heaviest punches. They test the waters with a jab before they start committing. All of these things, including punching with all of your might. You don't see boxers swinging from the get-go. All of this is because technique, leverage, timing, how to make the punches count are all things that have to happen in a boxing fight, but most importantly, to avoid getting punished. Boxing has evolved into a highly specialized discipline. Very successful boxers do fundamentals extremely, extremely well, and the novice with no grounding, with no years of drilling and testing under the fire, cannot hope to compete against a professional boxer, let alone one of the best who ever did it, no matter how strong he is. So my take on this is that Mayweather will ride out the first 2 or 3 rounds, because if Conor McGregor comes with any other strategy, it would be foolish. So Mayweather rides out the first 2 to 3 rounds and then turns on a very, very painful boxing lesson on Conor McGregor. Now, in other combat sports, moving to the UFC, big news came out a few days ago when TMZ reported that Jon Jones tested positive for the steroid Turinabol, if that's how you pronounce it, during an in-competition drug test at UFC 214, which, if confirmed, would mean that he'll be stripped of his light heavyweight title. And Jones, in my opinion, is entitled to due process, so we're not going to jump to any conclusion. In fact, I feel very strongly about this because there's no reason why USADA should have leaked this information to TMZ when the results have only come back for the A sample, and there is still another process that needs to go through. However, if the report is accurate and there are no mitigating factors in this whole process, then Jon Jones, very unfortunately, faces a wide range of very steep consequences for the doping violation. Let's go through the possibilities of what could happen to Jon Jones. First, of course, he will have his victory against Daniel Cormier overturned. It will be overturned to a no contest. There will be a forfeiture of his purse. I believe it was $500,000. Maybe he got a bonus on top of that. Forfeiture of the light heavyweight title. It would be returned to Daniel Cormier. I don't want to see anybody fighting for an interim title. It should be returned to Daniel Cormier. He will get from USADA, because he's a repeat offender, a 4-year ban for this particular infraction. The UFC could fine him $500,000 as well. The California State Athletic Commission also have to impose their own suspensions because they were regulating this particular bout in Anaheim. They can also levy a fine of 40% of Jon Jones's purse. So he could be paying out of his pocket. And I don't think the last one would happen, but we've seen this in sports before. Daniel Cormier could file a civil lawsuit alleging battery because he never agreed to fight against a roided up fighter. I don't think Daniel Cormier would do that, but these are the different consequences that Jon Jones could be facing. But let's look into the details. When this news came out, my initial reaction was anger because I was rooting for Jon Jones, although I like Cormier a lot. But when he won, I thought this guy's going to come back and he's going to dominate the UFC and he will end up being the greatest of all time. So I was very angry. But then when I looked into it, I saw that so much doesn't really add up. The steroid that was taken is pretty well known. It's an old school steroid. It's taken orally. And all his tests prior to the fight were clean. Only his fight night sample was dirty. And that's what doesn't make sense. It means that he would have had to take that steroid a day before or on the day of the fight, knowing very well that he will be tested that night. And that would not even be enough time for the steroid to go into effect. So he gains nothing by taking this particular steroid. He will not get an immediate boost from 1 day's worth of an orally digested steroid. So I don't know what to think about all of this. You know, before the fight, there were a lot of reasons why people thought Jon Jones would lose. They thought that he was always on steroids and got away with it. And now we're looking at Jon Jones post-USADA. He didn't look good against Ovince St. Preux in the warm-up fight before the Cormier fight. He's been inactive for a long time while DC was very busy. But I thought that this guy has so much natural talent that he can solve any problem in that ring. And that kick that concussed Daniel Cormier was not an accident. It was something that he knew about. It's something that he baited Daniel Cormier to do for the whole fight. He got that kick in and he got the win. So I have to say, on that night, although I like Daniel Cormier, I ended up rooting for Jon Jones. And because of that, and because of the circumstances that are surrounding this, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because it's just too hard to believe. Why would he do this, especially after what happened to him last time and knowing very well that he's going to be tested? But also, I have to say that if you have to feel for anybody here, it's Daniel Cormier. He has only 2 losses on his record, and both are to Jon Jones. The first one, Jon Jones admitted that he was high on cocaine while he did it. And now the second one, potentially, he could have had a steroid in his system. As an undefeated fighter, as an Olympic gold medalist, the knockout and the concussion that Daniel Cormier suffered is not something that's going to go away, no matter who he's fighting in the future. And for that to happen to him, and we saw how emotional he got after the fight, it's really sad to see. Now, let me read you a statement. When this news came up, Frank Lester, who is a coach at Jackson Wink Academy where Jon Jones trains, he took to Facebook to defend Jon Jones. He was with him when Jones received the news of the failed sample. And he went to Facebook with this particular statement. So let me read it out for you, because I think it really delivers the message of what's going on here. Frank says, "I was at a diner sitting next to Jon Jones when he got the phone call about his failed drug test. Supposedly, the story is, between weigh-ins and fight night, he took an oral steroid, which makes zero sense since it would not do anything at all for Jon to do so. It takes weeks for steroids to build up in your system to be a performance enhancer. Jon was devastated, to say the least. This is a setup. Straight up, no athlete would test clean his entire fight camp and randomly take some cheap, bleeping oral steroids between weigh-ins and fight night, knowing he would be tested once he got done fighting. This is a straight setup. They are trying to ruin this kid's life. It makes no sense, and Jon wouldn't do it. Let's see what happens with all of this, but I truly believe that Jon is innocent, and I hope that all of you will give him a fair chance before you send hateful judgments his way." End quote. So there you have it, folks. I think that message delivers what everybody should do. Twitter went crazy. Everybody started going like, I knew it. As a fan of the game, I'm going to sit back and wait for the information to come out, because we saw this from USADA before. They actually told Cyborg that she was suspended, and then they cleared her a few weeks later. Although with Cyborg, guys, I mean, I don't know. She has been known to take steroids in the past. It's changed the features of her face. She has a deeper voice than mine. I mean, I don't know. With Cyborg, I don't know. All I know is that there is a process that needs to go through by USADA before we should make our judgment on Jon Jones. And that's my take on the Jon Jones situations. When we come back, we are going to be wrapping up the show with some NBA talk. Kyrie Irving is a Boston Celtic now. More about this when we come back.
You're listening to Sports Unhinged.
It says a lot about the week we've had in sports when we have to wrap up the show with the news of Kyrie Irving moving from the Cavs to the Boston Celtics, because on any other day, this would be the thing that we lead the show with. But it kind of shows you what kind of a week we've had so far in the sports world. And that's why it's beautiful. In the sports world, you never run out of material. In fact, in every podcast, we're probably leaving out 10 or 15 other headlines that are worth talking about. But this one, definitely. I mean, we saw Kyrie Irving finally traded to the Boston Celtics in exchange for Isiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, who's a European player with no NBA experience, a 7-footer, and the unprotected pick of the Brooklyn Nets for 2018. And the immediate reaction that I've seen is that, hey, Cleveland got so much for Kyrie, they actually won this particular exchange. I see it a bit differently. I see that the people saying that the Cavs won and the Celtics lost aren't really thinking about the long term. And I've said it to a few people in conversation and I'll stick by it. In the long term, I think the Boston Celtics have got an edge, at least for me, on this particular trade. And only time will tell, of course. We still don't know what this unprotected pick will be like. I actually don't think that it's going to be as good as it is marketed. The Brooklyn Nets might not be in the bottom 5 teams of the NBA next season, which means they won't be in the lottery, which means the possibility of a number 1 overall pick is not there. People disagree with me, but I guess time will tell. But the reason why I think that the Boston Celtics are the winners of this particular trade, not the Cleveland Cavaliers, is mainly because of LeBron James. Is he even going to stay in Cleveland? The reason the Cavs can't win unless LeBron James is playing, that's not because of Kyrie. It's because that team is so heavily built to complement LeBron James that it can't survive without him. LeBron has shown that he will leave any situation, no matter how good it may look, if he feels that he can't win there. And all the signs are saying that LeBron is going to move to the LA Lakers next year. In the offseason, where does he hang out? Los Angeles. His businesses, he's got a lot of them in Los Angeles. And also, is bringing Isiah Thomas and Crowder enough to push Cleveland over the top? And by the top, I mean the Golden State Warriors? No. I think that Cleveland still reached the final with the pieces that they acquired, but they get humiliated by the Golden State Warriors even more than they did with Kyrie in their team. I'll say one thing, however, from the Golden State Warriors perspective. If I'm Klay Thompson, I am so happy that I don't have to guard Kyrie anymore. And if I'm Steph Curry, I'm literally salivating at the opportunity to shoot over Isiah Thomas, who is a miniature 5'9" player that has no defensive capabilities. He's a defensive liability simply because of his size. It's genetic. He's one of the best players in the NBA right now, but he can't defend simply because of his size. The Cavs may still get embarrassed in the finals again, and LeBron James will end up leaving Cleveland. Also, another reason that I feel that Boston got the better exchange out of this trade. Because at the time of his contract renewal, Isiah Thomas will be looking for a max deal. And at that time, he'll be going at 30 years of age. And the last time I checked, he's past the age of puberty. So he's not going to grow any taller. He's still going to be a 5'9" player, a 5'9" guard. He will do really well in the season. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a Cinderella story waiting to happen. But if LeBron James leaves and Isiah Thomas becomes the best player on your team, is he going to get you that ring? Absolutely not. Also, let's not forget that Isiah Thomas has a very, very dangerous career-ending injury, lingering injury in his hips. And the fact that he's getting older, how much more damage can his body take? Who even says that Isiah Thomas wants to stay in Cleveland? After LeBron James leaves, what is he going to stay in Cleveland for? It's not the greatest city to live in the United States. And if we've seen any signs, it's that Isiah Thomas has kind of intimated that at this point he's playing for the highest bidder. I don't think he'll have any loyalty to Cleveland. And it's very interesting that LeBron James is yet to welcome Isiah Thomas on social media. He's very quick to talk about Kyrie. He's very quick to show us how hard he's working out. But when a superstar joins his team, social media silence from LeBron James. Another thing that should be taken into consideration. Who is to say that Isiah Thomas's game will translate from the Celtics to the Cavs? Cavs fans are seeing the 29 points per game. They're seeing the 6 assists. But guess what? It's a different city, different system, different personnel, different responsibilities, different everything. And on top of that, you've got LeBron James in the team. You're a complementary piece to LeBron James. And that could take a bit of the pressure off Isiah Thomas and he could shine. But at the same time, it could be the exact opposite. There could be no chemistry there. There's no telling how Isiah Thomas translates in his role to Cleveland. And who's to even say that the great season that we saw from Isiah Thomas last year is not a fluke? What will happen if Isiah Thomas goes back to the 15 to 20 points per game player, low 40% shooting that he has been the majority of his career? Let's not forget, Kyrie Irving is a career-proven player. The statistics that he has are statistics that he's recorded year after year after year. Isiah Thomas has been a 15 to 20 points per game player. He scores in the low 40s when it comes to the shooting. What happens if he goes back to that Isiah Thomas? I think a lot of people are in love with short-term goals. Long-term views escape people. We have become very reactionary. It's the Twitter age. It's the Facebook age. It's the 160 characters, 140 characters. Now, I like a gritty player like Jay Crowder as much as anyone. But let's look at this scenario. If LeBron James leaves and Isiah Thomas doesn't re-sign, Crowder suddenly becomes the best player in Cleveland. Now, if we look at the Boston Celtics, I like their long-term situation here. And it's mainly due to the unpredictability of LeBron James. I can see that Kyrie, as a player in the Boston Celtics, will get comfortable. I can very well see him re-signing for the Celtics because of their great system, because of the executive staff, the decision-making. Everything there has made Boston the place that people want to go to. Not to mention that Boston also picked up a stud in Tatum. He's an absolute stud. And he can flat out play. They also have Jaylen Brown, who's improving. He's on the rise. And they no longer have to worry about paying the maximum contract to Isiah Thomas that they were very hesitant to do. They will very happily give that money to Kyrie Irving. They usually say, and again, I keep quoting the great Max Kellerman, who's mainly a boxing expert, but he's been doing great in First Take. The winner of every trade is the team that gets the best player. I happen to agree in this particular scenario. In any case, I think we're all going to be really looking forward to the showdown between the Cavs and the Celtics in the East. It's given us something to look forward to in the East. I think the Cavs will still win. They will get to Golden State and they will realize that it would have taken a lot more than Isiah Thomas and Jay Crowder to even make a dent in the dynasty of the Golden State Warriors. This has been Sports Unhinged. Thank you so much for listening to us. It's been absolutely a fantastic episode. Can't wait to hear your comments. Please let us know what you think. We're on soundcloud.com/Sports Unhinged. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on your Apple Podcast app, on iTunes, on Stitcher, and on Facebook. It's going to be a very interesting episode next week. We're going to be talking about a recap of the Conor McGregor Floyd Mayweather fight. And we also have an NFL special coming up where we will be making our predictions for the new NFL season. I've been Mohammed Khamis. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, see you.